The trade station of Vareth Prime hung in space like a giant metal flower. Ships came and went from its many docking ports. Thousands of aliens walked its wide corridors every day. They came to buy and sell. They came to make deals and sign treaties. They came from 100 different worlds, and they all had one thing in common. They were all afraid of the Kirith. Commander Alara Vance did not know this yet. She stepped off her ship and into the busy station with wide eyes and a smile on her face. This was only the second time humans had visited Vareth Prime. The first visit had been 3 months ago, when humanity made first contact with the galactic community. Now Alara was part of a small team sent to establish trade relations. She wore her uniform neatly pressed and clean, but on her head sat a hat that did not match. It was old and worn. The leather was cracked in places. The brim was bent from years of use. It had belonged to her father, an explorer who had died when she was young. She never took it off. It reminded her of him and of all the places he had wanted to see. The station was beautiful in a strange way. The walls curved like the inside of a shell. Lights of different colors marked different sections. Aliens of all shapes and sizes moved past her. Some had scales. Some had feathers. Some had too many eyes. Some had none at all. Alara wanted to stop and look at each one, but she had a job to do. She noticed something odd as she walked. The aliens moved away from her. At first, she thought it was because she was new. Humans were still unknown to most of the galaxy. But then she saw the fear in their eyes. They did not just move away. They hurried away. They pressed themselves against walls. They changed direction to avoid her path. Alara frowned. She was not a scary person. She was average height for a human. She had brown hair and brown eyes. She did not have claws or fangs or anything that should frighten anyone. She decided that aliens must simply be nervous around new species. That made sense. She would be nervous too if she met something completely unknown. What Alara did not know was that word had already spread about humans. The galaxy had learned that humans came from a death world. Earth was a planet of extreme temperatures, dangerous predators, and constant natural disasters. The other species could not understand how such soft, small creatures had survived there. They had no hard shells. They had no venom. They had no natural weapons at all. But the truly frightening thing was what humans had done on their death world. They had not hidden from the predators. They had not run away. Instead, they had walked up to wolves, one of the most dangerous pack hunters on their planet, and made friends with them. They had turned deadly predators into companions. They had done this over and over with many species. The galaxy did not know what to make of creatures who looked at danger and saw a potential friend. Alara continued through the station until she reached the main trading hub. It was a massive open space filled with stalls and shops. The ceiling was so high she could barely see it. Hundreds of aliens conducted business all around her. And standing above them, all were the Kirith. She stopped and stared. The Kirith were magnificent. They stood 8 feet tall on average. Their bodies were covered in silver fur that seemed to glow under the station lights. They had 4 arms, each ending in hands with retractable claws. Their faces were somewhat like big cats from Earth, with golden eyes that seemed to see everything. They moved with the easy grace of creatures who had never needed to fear anything in their entire evolutionary history. The Kirith were the apex predators of the galaxy. Their home world had made them into perfect hunters. They were fast, strong, intelligent, and deadly. Other species treated them with great respect, which was another way of saying they were terrified of them. The Kirith had never started a war. They had never needed to. Everyone simply agreed with whatever they wanted. Alara watched a Kirith merchant negotiate with a small, nervous alien. The Kirith was not being threatening in any way. It was simply standing there and talking. But the small alien was shaking so badly it could barely hold its data pad. Alara felt a wave of sympathy for it. She was about to move on when she felt something. It was the feeling of being watched. She had learned to trust that feeling during her years in the military. She turned slowly, trying to spot whoever was looking at her. At first, she saw nothing. Then her eyes caught movement near some cargo crates. A small shape ducked behind them. Alara tilted her head. She took a few casual steps to the side to get a better angle. The shape moved again, staying hidden. It was a Kirith cub. Alara felt her heart melt immediately. The cub was perhaps 3 feet tall, covered in fluffy silver fur that stuck up in all directions. Its golden eyes were huge in its small face. It was watching her with intense focus, the way a cat watches a bird through a window. The cub did not know that Alara had spotted it. It was practicing its stalking skills, creeping from cover to cover, keeping its eyes on the strange new alien. Alara pretended not to notice. She remembered being young and playing similar games. She did not want to ruin the cub's fun. A sharp voice cut through the noise of the trading hub. It was speaking in a language Alara did not understand, but her translator implant converted it instantly. Thesik. Thesik, where are you? Come here at once. The cub's ears flattened against its head. It looked toward the voice with an expression that needed no translation. It was the universal look of a child who did not want to stop playing. An adult Kirith pushed through the crowd. She was tall even for her species, and she wore clothing that marked her as someone important. Her golden eyes scanned the area with worry. When she spotted the cub behind the crates, relief flooded her face. Thesik, you cannot run off like that. This is a diplomatic event. You must behave properly. The cub, Thesik, slunk out from behind the crates. Her ears were still flat, and her tail dragged on the ground. She looked at her mother with pleading eyes. I was only watching the new alien, mother. The human. Look at it. It is so strange. The adult Kirith looked at Alara for the first time. Their eyes met. Alara smiled and gave a small wave. The Kirith's eyes widened slightly. She grabbed her daughter's paw and pulled her close. Stay away from the humans, Thesik. They are unknown. We do not yet understand them. Alara watched them walk away. The cub looked back over her shoulder, golden eyes still fixed on Alara with curiosity. More specifically, those eyes were fixed on Alara's old leather hat. There was something in that gaze, something that looked very much like a hunter who had just spotted interesting prey. Alara smiled and adjusted her hat. She had no idea that her life was about to change forever because of a curious child and a worn piece of leather. The diplomatic reception hall was the most beautiful room Alara had ever seen. The ceiling was made of transparent material that showed the stars outside. The floor was polished so perfectly that it reflected everything like a mirror. Floating lights drifted through the air, changing colors slowly. Tables around the edges held food and drinks from dozens of worlds. Alara stood with the rest of the human delegation near one wall. There were only 5 of them, and they felt very small in this room full of important aliens. Ambassador Chen was their leader, a calm woman with gray hair who had spent 30 years preparing for a moment like this. She was talking quietly with a group of insect-like aliens, her translator working hard to keep up. Alara's job was simple. She was here as security, though she hoped she would not need to do anything. She watched the crowd and tried to learn what she could about the different species. The Kirith were easy to spot. They moved through the room like royalty, which in a way they were. Other aliens made space for them without being asked. The Kirith ambassador was the same female who had pulled the cub away earlier. Her name was Keleth. Alara had learned this from the briefing before the reception. Keleth was one of the most powerful diplomats in the galaxy. Her word could make or break trade agreements worth more money than Alara could imagine. Calith approached the human delegation with slow, measured steps. The humans straightened up. Ambassador Chun stepped forward with a polite smile. Ambassador Calith, it is an honor to meet you. Humanity is grateful for this opportunity to establish relations with the Kirith people. Calith looked down at the humans with an expression that was hard to read. Her golden eyes moved from one human to the next, studying them like specimens in a laboratory. Humans, she said. Her voice was deep and smooth. We have heard much about your species. You come from a world that should have killed you. You survived by doing things that should not have been possible. You tamed predators. You conquered your planet. And now you reach for the stars. Ambassador Chun kept her smile steady. We are survivors, yes. We hope to be friends as well. Calith's whiskers twitched. Friends. An interesting word. The galaxy does not have many friends. It has allies and enemies. It has those who are useful and those who are not. What use are humans to the Kirith? The question hung in the air. It was not exactly an insult, but it was not friendly either. Alara felt tension building in her shoulders. She did not like the way Calith was looking at them, like they were insects who had wandered into a place they did not belong. What nobody noticed was the small shape moving through the crowd. Desik had escaped from her caretakers again. She was determined to get a closer look at the humans, especially the one with the strange thing on her head. The cub moved low to the ground, using the legs of taller aliens as cover. Her hunting instincts told her to stay hidden until the perfect moment. Ambassador. Chun was responding to Calith's question with careful diplomatic words. Alara was only half listening. Something felt wrong. Her soldier instincts were tingling. She scanned the crowd, looking for threats, but saw nothing obvious. Then she felt it again. That feeling of being watched. The same feeling from earlier in the day. She started to turn her head, but she was too slow. A blur of silver fur shot out from under a nearby table. Small paws grabbed the brim of Alara's hat. The leather was pulled from her head with surprising strength. And then the blur was gone, racing through the crowd with a prize held tightly in small claws. The room went silent. Every alien stopped talking. Every eye turned to look at what had happened. A Kirith cub had just attacked an alien diplomat. This was not a small thing. This was an incident. This could be seen as an act of aggression. Wars had started over less. Calith's face went pale under her fur. Her eyes widened with horror as she recognized her daughter running through the crowd with a human's possession. Her claws extended without her meaning to, a fear response she could not control. Desik! Her voice cracked. Desik, stop! Come back here immediately. The cub did not stop. She was too excited by her successful hunt. She dodged between legs and jumped over obstacles. The hat clutched to her chest like a trophy. Her small heart was beating fast with joy. She had done it. She had caught the prey. Every alien in the room waited for the human reaction. Some expected screaming. Some expected demands for punishment. A few expected violence. Humans were deathworlders, after all. No one knew what they might do when provoked. Alara stood very still. Her head felt strange without the familiar weight of the hat. That had meant more to her than almost anything else she owned. It was her last connection to her father. For a moment, something hot and angry flickered in her chest. Then she turned and saw the cub. Desik had stopped running. She stood about 20 feet away, looking back at Alara with huge golden eyes. The hat was pressed against her fluffy chest. Her tail was wagging slightly, the way a puppy's tail wags when it wants to play. The anger in Alara's chest melted away. She saw the situation clearly now. This was not an attack. This was not aggression. This was a child playing a game. A child who wanted attention. A child who had been curious about the strange new alien and had decided to do something about it. Alara's lips curved into a smile. She could not help it. The cub was possibly the cutest thing she had ever seen, and the situation was actually funny if you looked at it the right way. She bent her knees and dropped into a low crouch. Her eyes locked onto the cub with playful intensity. "Oh, you little thief," she said softly. Her voice carried in the silent room. "You think you can steal my hat and get away with it?" Desik's ears perked up. This was not the reaction she had expected. Prey was supposed to be scared. Prey was supposed to cry or run or freeze. This human was doing none of those things. This human was looking at her like a packmate about to start a game. Alara grinned wider. Her eyes sparkled with mischief. "You want to play? All right, little one. Let's play." She burst into motion. She ran straight at the cub with arms outstretched, but she was not running to attack. She was running to chase. There was a difference, and somehow the cub understood it immediately. Desik let out a sound that was half surprise and half delight. She spun and ran, still clutching the hat. The human was chasing her. The human wanted to play. This was the best day of her young life. Calla stood frozen in place. Her mind could not process what she was seeing. A human was chasing her daughter through a diplomatic reception. The human was laughing. Her daughter was laughing too, making sounds that Kirith cubs only made with close family members. The other aliens watched in complete confusion. They had no framework for understanding this behavior. Predators did not play with other predators. Prey did not chase those who hunted them. Yet here was a human doing exactly that. As if it were the most natural thing in the world, Ambassador Chun stood with her mouth slightly open. She had prepared for many situations. She had not prepared for this. But as she watched Alara chase the Kirith cub past shocked diplomats and overturned food trays, she realized something important. This might be the best diplomacy any human had ever done. Because the look on that cub's face was pure joy. And the look on the mother's face was transforming from horror to something very different. It was transforming into wonder. Desik ran faster than she had ever run before. Her small paws barely touched the polished floor as she raced through the reception hall. Behind her, she could hear the human's footsteps and the human's laughter. The sound made her heart feel light and happy in ways she did not understand. She jumped over a serving cart and knocked a tray of drinks to the floor. A tall alien with blue skin let out a startled scream and jumped backward. Desik did not slow down. She dodged left around a group of diplomats, then right under a table covered with food. Alara followed without hesitation. She slid across the polished floor, her boots squeaking as she changed direction. The table with food was too low for her to go under, so she planted her hands on top and vaulted over it. Food went flying everywhere. Someone shouted in an alien language that her translator turned into words she chose to ignore. The cub burst out the main doors of the reception hall and into the corridor beyond. The hallway was wide and curved gently to the left. Desik's claws clicked on the metal floor as she ran. She looked back over her shoulder to see if the human was still following. Elar was definitely still following. Her face was flushed, and her eyes were bright with excitement. She had not felt this alive in years. Her military training kept her body moving efficiently, but her heart was in the moment completely. This was pure, simple joy. Aliens in the corridor pressed themselves against the walls as the strange chase passed them. They had no idea what was happening. They saw a Kirith cub running for its life, or so they thought. They saw a human pursuing it with frightening determination. They assumed something terrible must be happening. But then they noticed the sounds. The cub was making high-pitched chirping noises. The human was laughing so hard she could barely breathe. Neither of them looked scared. They both looked like they were having the time of their lives. Desik turned a corner and found herself in a new area of the station. This section had more plants and open spaces. There were trees growing in large containers and benches where aliens could rest. It was some kind of garden area, designed to give people a break from the metal walls of the station. Perfect, Desik thought. More places to hide and climb and run. She scrambled up a tree trunk with speed that showed her natural climbing ability. Kirith were excellent climbers. Their claws were designed for gripping bark and branches. She reached a high branch and looked down at the human with triumph in her golden eyes. Alara stopped at the base of the tree. She put her hands on her knees and caught her breath. Then she looked up at the cub sitting above her. The hat was still clutched in those small paws, looking very battered now from all the running. "Think you're safe up there, little thief?" Alara called out. Her voice was warm and teasing. "Think humans can't climb trees?" Desik tilted her head. Of course, humans could not climb trees. They had no claws. They had no real fur to protect them from branches. They were soft and weak and breakable. Everyone knew that Deathworlders were tough, but they were not climbers. Alara reached up and grabbed the lowest branch. She pulled herself up with her arms alone, feet swinging in the air. Then she found footholds and started climbing properly. Her movements were not as graceful as the cub's, but they were determined and effective. Desik's eyes went wide. The human was actually climbing. The human was coming up after her. This was incredible. This was wonderful. This was the most fun she had ever had. She climbed higher, chattering with excitement. The branches got thinner as she went up. She was small and light, so they held her weight easily. The human would have more trouble, but Alara kept coming. She tested each branch before trusting her weight to it. She found roots that the cub had not used, thicker branches that could hold her larger body. She was not as fast, but she was persistent. She did not give up. By now, a crowd had gathered below the tree. Aliens of many species stood watching with their mouths open. Some were recording the scene with devices. Others were simply staring in disbelief. A human was climbing a tree to chase a Kirith cub. Nobody in the history of the galaxy had ever seen such a thing. Kelith pushed through the crowd. Her heart was pounding with a mixture of fear and something she could not name. She looked up at her daughter high in the tree branches, then at the human climbing after her. "Commander Vance," she called out. "Please, stop. You do not need to do this. I will make Desik return your property. I apologize for her behavior." Alara paused her climbing and looked down. She was breathing hard and her uniform was covered in dirt and leaves. Small scratches marked her arms where branches had caught her skin. She had never looked less professional in her life. "Ambassador," she called back, "I'm not angry. We're just playing. She's a good hunter. I want to see if I can catch her." Kelith did not understand. Playing? Adults did not play. Diplomats especially did not play. And no alien had ever played with a Kirith cub before. Other species were too scared to get close to Kirith children. Desik had stopped climbing. She sat on a branch near the top of the tree, watching the human approach. Something had changed in her heart during this chase. The human was not prey. The human was not a predator either. The human was something else. Something new. Something that made her feel safe and excited at the same time. Alara reached a branch just below the cub. She was careful not to go higher, where the branches might not hold her. She sat there and caught her breath, looking at Desik with a gentle smile. "Got you cornered now, little one. You're going to give me back my hat?" Desik looked at the hat in her paws. Then she looked at the human. Then, very slowly, she crept along the branch toward Alara. She was not scared. For reasons she did not understand. She knew in her heart that this human would not hurt her. She reached out with the hat, offering it back. But as Alara reached to take it, the cub's grip slipped. The hat fell. Both of them lunged for it at the same time. The branch cracked under their combined movement. Time seemed to slow down. Desik felt herself falling. She let out a cry of surprise. Her claws reached for something to grab, but found only air. Then arms wrapped around her. Warm, soft arms without claws or fur. The human had caught her. The human had stopped trying to save the hat and had saved her instead. They fell together, but not far. They crashed into the soft moss that covered the ground beneath the tree. The impact was gentle, cushioned by the plant life. They landed in a tangle of arms and legs and silver fur. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Desik looked up at the human's face, which was very close to her own. The human had leaves in her hair and dirt on her cheeks. She was still breathing hard from the climb. But her eyes were kind, and her smile was real. Desik did something she had never done with anyone, outside her immediate family. She reached up with one soft paw and booped Alara's nose. It was a Kirith gesture of affection, usually reserved for packmates and loved ones. Then she started to laugh. It was a chirping, purring sound that made her whole body shake. The human started laughing too. They lay there in the moss, covered in dirt and leaves, laughing until tears ran down their faces down above them. The crowd watched in stunned silence. They had just witnessed something that would be talked about for generations. A human and a Kirith cub collapsed together in laughter, as if they had known each other their whole lives. Calla stood at the edge of the crowd, and for the first time in her long diplomatic career, she had no idea what to say. The laughter slowly faded, but neither of them moved to get up. Alara lay on her back in the soft moss, staring up at the artificial sky of the garden dome. Desik was curled against her side, her small body warm and soft through Alara's dirty uniform. The cub was making a sound that Alara's translator could not process. It was deep and rhythmic and seemed to come from Desik's whole body. Purring, Alara realized. She's purring like a cat. The thought made her smile even wider. She had grown up with cats on Earth. She knew what purring meant. It meant comfort. It meant trust. It meant that despite all the differences between their species, this small creature felt safe with her. The crowd around them had grown larger. Aliens of every shape and color stood in a wide circle, watching the impossible scene. Their translators struggled with the sounds of laughter. Many species did not have a word for what they were hearing. Joy expressed through sound was not universal. But they could see the body language clearly enough. The human and the cub were happy. Desik lifted her head and looked at the hat that had fallen nearby. It lay on the moss a few feet away, more battered than ever. She crawled over to it, picked it up carefully, and brought it back to Alara. With great ceremony, she placed it on the human's head. It sat crooked, tilted to one side. "Good hunt," Desik said solemnly. Her voice was high and young, but she spoke with the seriousness of a warrior reporting to her chief. "You are fast for prey. Almost caught me 3 times. Alara sat up slowly, keeping the hat balanced on her head. She looked at the cub with warm eyes. "I'm not prey, little one. I'm a friend." Desik tilted her head, considering this new word. Friend. It was not a word that came up often in Kirith culture. They had pack. They had family. They had allies who served useful purposes. But friends? That was something different. Something softer. Something that this strange human seemed to think was important. "Friend," Desik repeated, tasting the word. "What is friend?" Alara thought about how to explain it. How do you describe friendship to someone whose culture might not have the same concept? "A friend is someone you choose to care about," she said finally. "Not because you have to. Not because they're useful. just because being around them makes you happy. Like running through this station with you just made me happy. Desic's golden eyes went very wide. She looked at Alara as if seeing her for the first time. You'd choose to care? Without pack bonds? Without family duty? Yes, humans do that a lot. We make friends everywhere we go. With anyone who wants to be our friend. The cub was quiet for a long moment. Then she pressed herself against Alara's side again and resumed her purring. She did not have words for what she was feeling, but she knew she wanted this human to stay close. The crowd parted as Keleth approached. The Kirith ambassador moved slowly, as if she were walking through deep water. Her face showed emotions that her diplomatic training had never prepared her to hide, wonder, confusion, and something that might have been the beginning of hope. She stopped a few feet from where Alara and Desic sat. For a moment, she simply looked at them. A daughter, the child of one of the most powerful families in the Kirith Dominion, was cuddled against an alien like they were littermates. Commander Vance, Keleth said. Her voice was strange, thick with feelings she did not know how to express. You chased my daughter. Through a diplomatic reception. Through the corridors of this station. Up a tree. She paused. Why? Alara gently stroked the fur on Desic's head as she answered. The cub's purring grew louder. Because she wanted to play. I remember wanting to play when I was young. I remember how much it hurt when adults were too busy or too scared to play with me. Too scared. Keleth's ears flattened slightly. What would make adults scared to play with you? Nothing, really. That's my point. But your people... Alara looked around at the watching aliens. When I walked through this station today, everyone ran away from me. They looked at me like I was dangerous. I'm not dangerous. I'm just human. But they didn't see that. She looked back at Desic, who had closed her eyes in contentment. I wonder if it's the same for your daughter. I wonder if other aliens look at her and only see a predator. I wonder if they're too scared to get close. Too scared to play. Keleth felt those words hit her like a physical blow. Because they were true. She had watched her daughter try to approach other alien children at diplomatic events before. They always ran. Their parents always pulled them away. Even species who were allied with the Kirith would not let their children near Kirith cubs. Too dangerous, they said. Too unpredictable. Too wild. The Desic was not dangerous. She was a child. She wanted to run and play and explore and make friends. And she had been denied that her whole life because of what she was taught until today. Until this human looked at her and saw not a predator, but a playmate. No other species has ever played with a Kirith cub before, Keleth said softly. Not once in all our history of contact with the galaxy. They are too afraid of us. Of what we might do. Of what our children might become. Alara nodded slowly. On my world, we have big cats. Lions, tigers, leopards. They're predators. Dangerous ones. But their cubs? She smiled. Their cubs are just babies. Fluffy and clumsy and desperate to play. Dangerous is what they might grow into. It's not what they are. You do not fear us? I respect you. That's different from fear. And I would never fear a child, no matter what species they are. Keleth knelt down slowly. Her height meant that even kneeling, she was nearly at Alara's eye level. Her golden eyes studied the human's face with new understanding. On my world, Keleth said, we have a saying. The strength of the pack is in how it treats its weakest members. The strength of a species is in how it treats those different from itself. She paused. I thought I understood that saying. I did not. Not until now. Desic opened her eyes and looked at her mother. Then she looked at Alara. She reached out and took one of Alara's hands in her small paws. Mother, she said with the certainty that only children have, I want the human to be my friend. I choose to care about her." Calith's breath caught in her throat. Her daughter had never said anything like that about any alien before. Had never even shown interest in aliens beyond curiosity. But here she was, holding a human's hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I think," Calith said slowly, "that I am beginning to understand why your species survived your death world. You did not just survive. You thrived, because you looked at the dangerous things around you and asked if they wanted to be friends." Alara laughed softly. "Something like that. We domesticated wolves, you know? Turned them into dogs. Our best friends. Our companions. Everyone thought we were crazy. And now?" Calith asked. "What do people think of you now?" Alara looked around at the watching crowd. Hundreds of aliens stood there, their faces showing a mix of emotions. Fear, yes, but also something else. Curiosity, wonder, the beginnings of understanding. "I think," Alara said, "they're still figuring that out." Calith stood and offered her hand to Alara. It was a human gesture, one she had learned about but never used. Alara took it and let the tall alien pull her to her feet. Desik immediately grabbed her other hand, refusing to let go. "I would like to continue our diplomatic discussions," Calith said, "but perhaps in a less formal setting. I find that I have many questions about humanity that were not covered in the briefing documents." Alara grinned. "I'm happy to answer them. Fair warning, though. The answers might be a little strange." "I am beginning to think," Calith said with the first hint of warmth Alara had heard in her voice, "that strange is simply another word for human." They walked out of the garden together. The tall Kirith ambassador, the dirty, leaf-covered human soldier, and between them, a small silver cub who had found something she never expected to find, a friend. 1 year had passed since the day a small cub stole a stranger's hat. In that time, the galaxy had changed in ways nobody could have predicted. The story had spread across every network and news channel. Video of the chase had been watched billions of times. Analysts and experts had written countless papers trying to explain what they had. Witness thought the Human-Kirith Alliance had been signed 3 months after the incident. It was the fastest diplomatic agreement in galactic history. Trade routes opened. Cultural exchanges began. And throughout it all, one image kept appearing in the coverage. A small Kirith cub pressing her nose against a laughing human's face. Commander Alara Vance was no longer a simple soldier. She had been appointed as the primary human liaison to the Kirith people. She spent most of her time on the joint Kirith outpost that had been built on the frontier. The station was named Desik's Landing, though the cub pretended to be embarrassed whenever anyone mentioned it. Desik herself had grown considerably in the past year. She was nearly 5 feet tall now, gangly and awkward in that way that all adolescents are when their bodies grow faster than their coordination. Her silver fur was sleeker, her golden eyes sharper, and her hunting skills were developing quickly. But some things had not changed. She still followed Alara everywhere. She still insisted on sleeping in Alara's quarters when her mother was away on diplomatic missions. And she still called Alara her pack sister, despite the biological impossibility of such a thing. Today was an important day. The Galactic Council was meeting to discuss what they called the human. Question. Representatives from dozens of species had gathered to debate whether humanity should be given full membership in galactic civilization. The meeting was happening on Vareth Prime, in the same station where everything had begun. Alara stood at the edge of the council chamber, wearing her formal uniform. Her father's hat sat on her head as always, but now it had a new decoration. A small silver charm hung from the brim, shaped like a claw. Desik had given it to her on the 6-month anniversary of their friendship. She had made it herself, using a shed claw from her own paw. The council chamber was massive, designed to hold representatives from every known species. Floating platforms at different heights allowed beings of all sizes to participate. The air was filled with the quiet hum of translation devices, working overtime. A tall insectoid being called the session to order. It spoke in clicks and buzzes that the translators converted to common galactic speech. The matter before this council is the status of humanity. Some have argued that humans are too dangerous to be given full membership. Others argue they are too valuable to exclude. We will hear testimony from those who have worked most closely with them. Several species spoke. Some praised humans for their creativity and problem-solving abilities. Others warned about their violent history and their disturbing tendency to treat everything as a potential friend. One amphibian representative actually used the phrase, aggressive friendliness, as if it were a threat. Then Callus stepped forward. She had become humanity's strongest advocate in the past year. Her support had surprised many, given the Kirith's traditional distance from other species. But those who knew the story understood. I will tell you, Callus began, her deep voice carrying through the chamber, why the Kirith allied with humanity. It was not because of their technology, though it is impressive. It was not because of their military strength, though they are formidable warriors. It was because of something that happened at a diplomatic reception 1 year ago. She paused, letting the anticipation build. Every being in the chamber was listening. My daughter stole a human's possession. A hat, a simple thing, worn and old. Any other species would have reacted with anger. They would have demanded punishment. They would have seen a Kirith cub's actions as an attack, an insult, a reason for conflict. Callus' golden eyes found Alara in the crowd. Commander Alara Vance laughed. She got down on the ground and chased my daughter through the station like they were old friends playing a game. She climbed a tree. She fell in the dirt. She made a fool of herself in front of the most important diplomats in the galaxy. And she did not care, because making my daughter happy was more important to her than her dignity. The chamber was completely silent. Do you know what my daughter did when the chase was over? She gave back the hat. And then she asked if the human could be her friend. Callus' voice grew thick with emotion. In all our history of contact with other species, no alien child has ever wanted to be friends with a Kirith. They are too scared of us. They see monsters when they look at our cubs. But this human saw a child who wanted to play. She turned to address the whole council. You ask why we should accept humanity. I ask you to consider what they offer that no other species can. They do not see monsters. They do not see threats. They look at the galaxy and see friends they have not made yet. They look at predators and wonder if they might like to play fetch. They are insane by any rational standard. And that insanity might be exactly what this galaxy needs. An ambassador from a nervous small species spoke up. But their history of violence, their wars, their weapons... Yes, Callus agreed. They have done terrible things to each other. They have fought wars that devastated their world. They have created weapons that could destroy everything. And yet, she held up one clawed finger. They also looked at wolves, pack hunters who could tear them apart, and decided to become friends. They looked at horses, massive creatures that could crush them, and decided to work together. They have taken their capacity for violence and their capacity for love and mixed them together in ways we cannot understand. She walked back toward where Alara stood. Thesek had appeared at some point, standing close to her human friend as always. This is my daughter, Callus said. She is the future of the Kirith people, and she has chosen a human as her pack sister. She has chosen to bind herself to a species that every logical analysis says she should fear. She looked at Thesek with unmistakable pride. I could not be more pleased with her choice. The council murmured among themselves. Then the insectoid moderator asked, Does the human representative wish to speak? Alara had not planned to say anything. She was not a diplomat. She was just a soldier who had chased a kid through a space station. But Desik squeezed her hand and looked up at her with encouraging golden eyes. Alara stepped forward, aware of thousands of alien eyes watching her. "I don't have a fancy speech prepared," she said honestly. "I'm not good at politics or diplomacy. I'm just a person who misses her dad and wears his old hat everywhere she goes." She touched the brim of the hat, feeling the familiar worn leather. "But I can tell you this. Humans aren't special because we're strong or smart or brave. We're special because we refuse to be alone. We look at the universe and we can't stand the idea of facing it without friends by our side. We'd rather die making a friend than live as enemies." She looked down at Desik. "This kid stole my hat. My favorite thing in the whole world." And all I could think was how much she reminded me of myself when I was young. How much she just wanted someone to notice her. Someone to play with her. Someone to see her as more than just what she was born as. She looked back at the council. "That's what we offer the galaxy. We'll see you for who you choose to be, not what you were born as. We'll play with your children when everyone else is too scared to get close. We'll chase you through space stations and fall out of trees and make fools of ourselves, because making you smile is worth more to us than looking dignified." She grinned. The same grin she had worn when the chase began a year ago. "We're going to befriend this entire galaxy, whether you like it or not. That's just what humans do." The vote happened an hour later. It was not unanimous, but it was decisive. Humanity was granted full membership in the galactic community. Afterward, there was a celebration. Alara tried to slip away from the crowds, but Desik found her on an observation deck, looking out at the stars. "You made a good speech," the young Kira said, settling against Alara's side. She had to bend down now to fit under Alara's arm, a sign of how much she had grown. "I just told the truth. That's why it was good." Desik was quiet for a moment. "Do you really think you can befriend the whole galaxy?" Alara laughed. "I don't know, but I made friends with you, didn't I? If I can befriend a kid who stole my favorite hat, I can probably befriend anyone." "I still won that hunt," Desik said smugly. "You absolutely did. Best thief in the galaxy." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching ships move between the stars. Somewhere out there, a whole galaxy waited, full of creatures who had never met a human, full of children who had never had anyone to play with them. Alara adjusted her hat, feeling the weight of the silver claw charm against her forehead. "Come on," she said finally. "Let's go make some more friends." Desik's purring filled the quiet observation deck as they walked back toward the celebration together. And across the galaxy, species who had spent thousands of years alone began to wonder if perhaps they had been doing things wrong all along. Perhaps the secret to the universe was not strength or power or intelligence. Perhaps it was simply being willing to play.